one of the things that I was reading that's interesting about the female anatomy is that because of our differences in our metabolic demands, we have different energy requirements in different times of the month. And we also have higher subcutaneous body fat percentages than men, which is really necessary for women to be healthy.
Welcome to the Movement Driven Podcast with Dr. Greg Goldberger, where we help you bridge the gap between pain and performance. Each week, we'll share strategies, insights, and real-life applications to help you keep moving and stay driven. Now, let's get into this week's episode of the Movement Driven Podcast. Hello, welcome to or welcome back to the Movement Driven Podcast. I am your host, Dara Sweat, and today we've got Dr. Greg Goldberger here, but we also have one of our other PTs, Elza van Niekerk. Elza, how are you?
Pretty good. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So today we're kind of just going to talk a little bit more specifically about women in the PT space in general. Dr. Greg, I know that you were talking about some of the things that your wife has been kind of going through. So I know that, he wanted to bring Elza in for this one just because he's not a woman and can't speak on a lot of women things, but he is a husband and a father, and has to be by his wife's side for a lot of these conversations that they're having. So we could start kicking off with that. And then I think that'll help really just kick off the conversation that we really want to get into today.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Let's see how my wife reacts to this podcast. My wife, she's a freaking rock star. She's an amazing mother, an amazing wife. And the thing that I see every day is her struggle to try to be as good of a mom as she can possibly be, but still give herself the love and attention that she needs and deserves to keep doing those things that she is so good at and wants to be so good at. So the thing that I see with a lot of our clients too, Elza, is when especially the moms that come in, they have so much on their plate. They put so much stress on themselves. And I totally understand it. I remember, I think my wife told me this, when you have a baby, your amygdala grows in size. And for those of you that don't know what the amygdala is a part of your brain that controls your emotions and your fear and any rational thought. And when you become even as a father, when you become a parent, there's a lot less rational thought sometimes, especially in this crazy world that we're living in these days. So anyway, I bring it back to the moms are stressed. Women can be stressed and for good reason. And I know I see as a therapist that can definitely affect how we heal in general. It affects cortisol levels in our blood, which affects inflammation in our tissues. But I know you deal with this on a more maybe thought-provoking level where we talk about emotions and we talk about things, and we've touched on this in previous podcasts, but how do you kind of handle the differences of what maybe women deal with, or how their brains work and affects their physical being different than some of your male clients?
Yeah, I really like that you touched on just how many different things women try to juggle on such a regular basis. And I think what I see a lot is that self-care comes last. They're taking care of everybody else and they're making sure that everybody else is okay, but taking care of themselves is lower on their list. And one of the things that I have to keep reminding myself of as well is that, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. You can't take care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself. So yeah, I think one of the conversations I have with a lot of my female clients is that the role of stress in their body, and exactly like you said, like how it affects their hormone changes and how it affects their ability to recover. And what I hear a lot is that people say, I got this injury and I took 2 or 3 weeks off, and then I thought it would get better and it felt better while I was resting. But when I went back to try to work out again, that same injury was still there. I hear that across the board with my clients, but I think what I see in women in particular is that a lot of times they'll get stuck in a heightened nervous system response. And that really affects not just your mental state, but your physical state too. It changes how you move.
100%.
And if your movements are inefficient and your load distribution is inefficient, then there's areas of your body that are working a lot harder than others, and areas that are trying to hold you upright that are not meant to do that by themselves.
Right.
So I can't just look at trying to rebalance the tissues and trying to help your body learn how to move as efficiently as possible. What I really have to do is I have to try to understand why your body went into that dysregulated state to begin with. And for a lot of women, it's the stress of all the things that they have to deal with or how their body responds to stress, maybe in a not very healthy way, and how that ends up impacting them physically.
And it's so true that it's not, I think a lot of people think it's always, this muscle is weak or this joint's not moving well. And it's pain and dysfunction is so much more complex. And I think, Dara, I know we've talked about this on a previous episode where we compared like the monster truck driver to the mom with the fender bender accident, where on MRI, the mom does not have technically a worse injury, at least not what we would define as based off an MRI, but you can't neglect all of those psychosocial parts of things that can really make have a physical impact on how somebody's feeling.
I had a friend recently who got in what ended up being a minor fender bender, but did give her at least a moderate injury. But her kid was in the car. She was taking her kid to school, and she was so stressed by wanting to protect her child that she didn't even notice that she was injured. And now that it's well past that, she still has that fear that she had during that car accident is still stuck in her body, and it's still affecting her ability to recover from her injury. Yeah.
And I think that, it speaks to what you and I think share in common, and why I think the philosophy of movement driven is unique in a way from other therapists that I've ran into in my career. It's like, we're not looking at this one dimensionally. We're really trying to look at you as a person, not just, hey, there's my knee patient, there's my low back patient. I mean, yeah, we got to address what you come to see us, but your injury and you are so much more. And so I think that's what really sets us apart, is how we kind of address, like, what is the actual root cause? It's not just like we talked about before, but yeah, I think it's, and what, like we said, it holds so much more true for women. And it's just the way that brains are designed sometimes. There's more empathy, there's more worry, there's more, like we said before, it's just, how's everybody else doing? And I think that brings us to, like, is there anything that, and Dara, jump in with a question. Sorry, I'm like taking over.
No, Dr. Greg's the host now.
But do you talk about like strategies with these clients, like with your mom, with your mom? I keep going back to mom because that's where my head goes these days, but all females. Is there things that you talk about? I know something else I wanted to bring up today, well, maybe we can go into this now, is, there are hormonal changes throughout the course of a 28-day cycle for a female that a male does not have to deal with. And that there's some different research out there that can be conflicting, and, there's, maybe we're not concrete in the knowledge that we have on what's really going on. But I know I've read a lot on during certain times of the month, a woman's body has different release of different hormones. So there's increased laxity in ligaments, so we can be more susceptible to injury during, if you're an adolescent soccer athlete, there's going to be certain times of that month that you are more susceptible to a ligamentous sprain just by nature of the hormones that are traveling through your blood. So can you speak to that? Do you strategize with these women on this? Is something you guys talk about, or what can you speak on in terms of that?
Yeah, I think, like you said, there's a lot of conflicting information on that right now because we just don't have that many studies that are female specific. And even if they are female specific, they may not have necessarily accounted for measuring hormonal levels during the cycle or during the study. So they don't really know exactly how that affects the results that they got. But I think just one of the things I want to touch on that I think deserves its own conversation, but I've seen a lot of people say that they should cycle sync their training and their recovery, which I think is important. But I think some people take it a little bit too far, and they say that there are certain times of your cycle that you don't have as much strength and you have a lot greater need for recovery. So during that time, they say that you should just rest. And I disagree with that strongly because I think one of the other influencers that I've listened to recently is, she said, if you take a whole week out of the month off every month, you're taking a quarter of your life's training capacity away. And the benefits of strength training and building a healthy, strong musculoskeletal system for women especially is so important as we age. We can't miss out on that purely because there's a certain part of our cycle where we're not performing at our maximal levels.
Especially if we're training for sport comparatively.
Right. And for sport and for life,
Yeah.
you can't just not perform. You have to be able to perform on a regular basis, regardless of what your cycle is doing. And you just have to try to figure out how to listen to your body and what it might need during that time, instead of saying, well, I'm going to completely step back from this.
So in that way, you can definitely schedule maybe more of your hypertrophy weeks or your strength weeks. Obviously not during that week, but you're still having an active recovery, an active rest, where yoga, Pilates, walking, biking, those things should still be, and not to negate strength at all, but that's a good opportunity to work on those little stabilizers, all the stuff that we preach from an injury prevention standpoint. Hey, let me take my recovery week and attack these little core stabilizers, these little things that don't get enough love in a average training program. So yeah, we can definitely strategize like that. I love that idea. It's something I need to bring to my page. See, this is why we do this there. We're teaching each other stuff.
Exactly.
To that point, I think you did mention this, Dr. Greg, is that it doesn't just mean that you just should do active recovery during that week. Strength training is still very important. Mm-hmm. You might not be breaking PRs every week or month, but you'll be setting yourself up for success by priming the muscles the right way, by doing submaximal effort strength training, so that the next time that your hormone levels peak and you're ready for the PR day, you're moving well and you're strong and you're supporting your muscles and your bones the way that you need to, so that you can hit your PRs.
Love it. Love it.
I think just on that same topic, this is something we've mentioned to a lot of our patients, is if you're just resting to try to recover, you're really not able to activate all of the systems in your body that need to work to help your body recover optimally. Recovery and healing after any internal or external stress on your body is such a complicated process that I think it deserves maybe some expert commentary on it, but it really is a full body process. It involves every single system in your body and how they interact with each other, to the point where you really need to help your body be able to use those systems as well as possible, so that you can recover faster, so you don't have to spend any time bogging your body down with that. And one of the things we talk about with our patients a lot is exactly that, active recovery. If you can get some kind of activity that gets your blood flowing but doesn't overstrain your tissues that you've already overstrained with the training that you did, it helps to pump your blood and circulate your oxygen. But one of the important parts of that is that your circulation is like a highway transportation system in your body, and it really helps to get the nutrients and the oxygen to the things that need it, but it also helps to flush away the waste that accumulates from cellular damage and tissue breakdown. Even if it's a normal breakdown process, like what happens during exercise, those waste products can't just sit and accumulate in your body, because then you'll have a lot of muscle soreness, you'll be really tired, you'll be really low energy, and you need to help it flush back out of your system. And the way to do that is to get your blood pumping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we talked about that. We're touching on everything. From an injury rehab standpoint too, we say the same things. Like, it's not just recovery when you're feeling good, it's during the injury rehabilitation part. I think people, like, doctors are at fault too. Like, oh, just rest it. Okay, no, we have to facilitate the healing process. We have to facilitate the recovery process. And obviously, the higher level your training is, then the more you have to dedicate some thought processes behind this. But it all comes back to, what are your goals, what are your intentions, and what are you looking to accomplish? But yeah, that's a lot of good insight there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to add too, it also, like, at least from my personal experience being an athlete who's had multiple knee surgeries and, played soccer, runs, I still do CrossFit, I still do all of those things. Sometimes my rest and recovery look different. even though I'm the same person. Like literally, there could be sometimes where, maybe we have a strength week where we're PRing that week or at least, going for a 1 rep max of like whatever is going to be heavy. And I'm PRing by 14, that's like the max. I think it's like 15 pounds I like PR'd by for difference, but it's like 3 or 4 times that week that I'm PRing. That rest day is going to look so very different than a rest day where we're just maybe doing more cardio, HIIT style workouts where we're not really touching the barbell, but we're grabbing dumbbells. And the heaviest dumbbell I grab is like a 35-pound dumbbell. So that rest day is going to look a little bit different. Maybe I can truly do a rest day on that day. But the rest day after like a PR day, I might have to go for a walk. I might have to do, a couple of minutes of stretching here and there throughout the day just to get my muscles to, not be so hot. And same thing where like when the gate comes around and I start training for the gate, in addition to doing all those CrossFit style workouts, I'm scaling at the gym, but I'm running 5, 6, 7, up to 9 miles for my training. And then race day, especially after race day, that recovery looks even more different. I'm not even lifting weights for that. So it's interesting to me as an athlete, and especially to be learning, from watching and observing you guys from the PT perspective as well, of just like how different that is, not just because I'm a woman, just because of the different types of workouts that I'm doing.
Yeah. I like, Dara, I like that you said, something about your temperature regulation and your muscle temperature after certain types of exercises, but also in different times of the month. And that's definitely, that is one of the ways that women's bodies are very unique, is that, first off, I recently started tracking some of my metrics through Whoop, and it's really interesting because you can see based on your cycle, your recovery dips down quite a lot right before your period. Your body temperature drops, and your heart rate and your heart rate variability also changes, which I didn't really, I know these things, but I've never seen them on myself until I started tracking the metrics. And I was like, oh my gosh, you can see this cyclical pattern to all of those things and how all of those systems connect based on this cyclical pattern.
We talk about heart rate variability and pain. I mean, that's going to be corresponded, and better heart rate variability is shown to be a better predictor of good health.
And
so that
health and stress.
Right, exactly. That's crazy.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I was reading that's interesting about the female anatomy is that because of our differences in our metabolic demands, we have different energy requirements in different times of the month. And we also have higher subcutaneous body fat percentages than men, which is really necessary for women to be healthy. You need that fat to help regulate your hormones and the rest of your body. But because of that, it affects the way that we are able to regulate our body temperature. And if your body is just running really hot for when your hormones are in certain times of the month, like especially right before your period, your estrogen levels are really low. It's not really promoting recovery as well. Your body temperature stays higher for longer. That will really deplete your energy levels. And
now your metabolism's higher,
right.
You're burning more calories.
Exactly.
So now you have less energy, because as much as we think of calorie deficit, losing weight, that's not always what we need when we're thinking of training program. We need energy. We need good food. We need to fuel our system. So now you're running hot, you're burning more calories. And if you're not in calorie deficit mode and you're in, hey, strength gain mode, or, hey, I'm now menopausal and I have osteoporosis and I need protein to help my workouts to gain strength, to weight bear, to prevent brittle bone disease from coming on.
Absolutely.
Like, it seems so simple when you talk about just, recovery.
Right.
It's so much more serious than that when you really break it down. I think that's a great point, Elsa. I think that's the main thing that people can get out of this podcast. Honestly, I think that's a huge effect of, like, women are changed, their bodies change throughout a given month, and men don't have to deal with that. Like, we can get a birth and all that stuff, that men don't have to deal with this stuff. And so we need to be cognizant of, and I need to be cognizant of it as a therapist treating female clients, for sure. So that's a super interesting point.
one of the things that I talk to my patients about quite a lot is not just the role of hormones and how it affects your energy expenditure and your body regulation, but how there is a natural change in your hormone levels that's supposed to help regulate all of the systems in your body.
And this is specific to women's or men? Or,
I mean, men's bodies,
but more accessible to women, I would imagine.
right? Men's bodies also work like this, but because women's cycles are on a 28-day cycle and men's hormonal cycles are on a 1-day cycle,
That
it's
explains a lot.
right. It's just a sidebar real quick. It's really interesting that a man's hormone cycle is based on a 1-day cycle on the cycle of the sun, and a woman's hormonal cycle is on a 28-day cycle on the cycle of the moon. That was really interesting.
Women are for Venus, men are for Mars, right? That is insane.
Yeah. That was I thought about that the other day and I was like, oh wow, that's really neat.
That is super cool.
So, one of the biggest things that I talk to my female clients about is how your nervous system and your hormonal system have to work together. In fact, they're not really two separate systems. They're one system. And it really affects how your body responds to whether or not it's in a sympathetic nervous system state or if it's in a parasympathetic nervous system.
Which would be fight or flight response.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to fluctuate in and out of those states. And a lot of times my female patients that come in have a disruption in whether or not they actually fluctuate in and out of those states. A lot of times they're just stuck in the sympathetic nervous system response where they have this heightened stress response. They have this heightened adrenaline. It lowers their estrogen and it keeps them from being able to recover if they're stuck in that state. And then they come in and they ask me, why do I have so many injuries? And then we have to talk about why is your body's response to stress so poor?
And then that's going to be on that molecular level, like you're kind of insinuating there. You're going to see that on a macro level of like localized around, we talk about all the time, I know I do, of just muscle guarding in a protective phase around an injury. But if your nervous system, which is in charge of, is that alarm system trying to tell your consciousness how to interpret, is this truly a threat or am I overreacting? Your body has no sense of how to answer that question. Is this really a threat? So now something that maybe in a different time of the month could be a 3 out of 10 on the scale of how much it's bothering or affecting your function. Now it's a 6 out of 10 and it's in the back of your head and you're thinking about the injury and it's affecting your relationship with your family and how you're functioning in the world. And it sounds like I'm exaggerating it even when I'm saying it out loud. Like, oh, the guy hurt or the lady hurt her knee, Greg. Stop it. It's like, it's so much more than that. And everybody handles things differently. And I mean, we could literally have a whole podcast just about this topic, honestly, because that's what it's been so far. Through the first 4 episodes of our podcast, it's been a lot of pain science. But I think, Dara, I want to make this point. It comes back to like, I'm going to sound maybe a little cocky when I say this. Most PTs are not having this conversation, which saddens me. But what we're trying to do is, again, I'm going to say it again, we're looking at you as what's going on, what can we do to help your entire wellness profile. If it's out of our scope, we're going to help find somebody that's going to be a part of our team, your team, to make you better. But we're not just looking at you like a sprained ankle when you walk in. It's so much more than that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we mentioned this in one of the other episodes as well of like, you know, we're getting down to the root cause. So like when I first started working with Elza and I'm telling her my never ending list of ailments that I have from, you know, car accidents and playing sports and doing CrossFit and just being, you know, an active woman. When I'm talking about my knee pain and she first and foremost is giving me exercises for my hips. And I'm like, but I've told you my knee hurts and I'm so used to going to PT for however weeks my insurance will cover, you know, and then the PT giving me some 3 exercises to do while then they go talk to 5 other people that they have at the same hour that I'm scheduled there. So, you know, I'm just doing what they say to do and it's all like bend your knee, you know, lift your leg, be on the bike, like instead of like these, hip thrusts that I have to do, or like opposite or windshield wipers and things like that have significantly changed how I'm able to move in the gym, because I'm training my body to shift, not only shift, but also to be able to handle the load that I'm, putting on my back for a back squat, or, picking up for a deadlift, just so much better, and not putting me in a position of injury where I'm actually learning how my body is supposed to stand, move, lift, as opposed to, I did some leg lifts earlier today, and now, so that's my PT, right? Like, no, we're doing things that are actually kind of retraining you almost how to walk, and how to walk efficiently and appropriately. And then also which will bleed into lifting or picking something up, putting something down, putting something away in the cabinets, not just as far as how the gym goes, but how life goes in general.
Right. How we're actually trying to integrate this back into your functional movement patterns. Not just, to your point, not just a matter of this leg lift is going to fix you. No, this leg lift is going to give you the ability to be more in tune with that muscle, then learn how to use that series of movement patterns in congruency with the functional movement patterns that you need each and every day. So it's so much more than that. I kind of wanted to piggyback off something you said there, because this is something else that I was thinking of that we could talk about. Elza, was you mentioned the knee pain and how Elsa went straight to the hips, and that's something we do regardless of your sex. It's, whether you're male or female, the hip tends to be a big factor in knee health. We talk about that all. Yeah, the knee is very dependent on what the hip and the ankle are doing on either side of it. But for women, this can be even a bigger issue, because we can talk about kind of just the human anatomy. Women have what we call a wider Q angle, right? So women have a wider pelvis to bear children than their counterpart men. And because of this, the angle between the outside of their pelvis, the ASIS, for those listening, to your knee joint is a wider angle. And that kind of poses a great amount of increased stress on certain aspects of the knee. And you're already in a physically more susceptible position to go into what we would refer to as valgus of the knee joint, which is where the knee caves in. So you think about like non-contact ACL tears in sports. I think we all think, we've all seen our favorite wide receiver. If you're a football fan, just go out and cut, and when he falls and nobody touched him, you kind of know what just happened. And it's usually a similar mechanism of injury. But the literature shows us that females are actually tearing their ACLs at a higher rate than their counterpart males in the same sports at the same age for adolescent athletes.
I read a statistic on it this morning, which is the only reason why I know this off the top of my head, that non-contact ACL tears in females is 67%, and in men it's 50%.
There you go.
Yeah.
And so
significantly more.
Yeah, and the Q angle is one of the things I know that they've talked about. We talked about the hormonal changes and increased laxity in certain times. I know that I've read the intracondylar notch, which is, for those of you listening, it's within the knee, and that's kind of where the ACL sits. Mm-hmm. Tends to be a little bit smaller in the female, so there's literal less room for a more lax joint, and the ligament gets rubbed up against the bony that prominence is there. So there's like lots of and then quad dominance.
Right, I was gonna say,
yeah,
female pelvis is usually tilted forward just a little bit more than men's, again because that's the way that our pelvis is shaped, and it allows us to be able to tilt in the right direction so that we can bear children. But it makes you more quad dominant. It makes you longer at the bottom of your abdomen, and it makes you shorter at the back of your the lower part of your back. Mm-hmm. And it also changes how your glutes
changes the hip flexor positioning too. Right. So now your psoas is less efficient in moving. Yeah.
Right. And then from there, that is already how women are designed. Mm-hmm. But to add to that, if they do have children and they have to flex into or extend their spine into that position so that their belly can grow, mm-hmm. and it can go through the whole mm-hmm. childbirth process, and then the trauma of childbirth mm-hmm. itself. I mean, which
is a whole nother thing of why is pelvic floor PT not standardized healthcare in the United States of America post any type of childbirth, C-section or natural. But that's another podcast for another day. Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
But exactly that, it should be a requirement that prenatal and postnatal strengthening and stabilizing should be necessary.
At least
to aid in
visit with
recovery.
a pelvic therapist. Yeah.
Right. Because it's not, I have a significant amount of female athletes that come in and say they're having trouble activating their core. They're having trouble connecting to their pelvic floor. They're having trouble getting those muscles to coordinate the right way. And it maybe has always been a thing for them, but it drastically changed during pregnancy and during childbirth.
Of course.
And then,
it's sad how much of a joke it is, especially in like the mother community, of when you laugh, you have to cross your legs. That's not normal anatomy and physiology for those of you listening. That is usually something that can be solved by a really good pelvic floor therapist post-pregnancy. And it should be, and preventable. And it should never even get to that point.
yeah, it's normal in the sense that it happens to everybody, but it's also not normal in the
That
sense
it stays there forever.
And you just have to
That's
accept,
my point. Yes,
accept that it has to be that way. Yeah, but for sure, I think Greg and I, for all of our patients, we talk about the core and proximal stability and proximal mobility most of the time.
Yeah.
If your central body is in the right position and you're controlling it the right way, it's a lot easier for your longer levers and your peripheral areas and your hands and your legs to not have to work so hard.
Mm-hmm.
But when that's disrupted, all that strain gets pushed up or down or sideways or off to the side, and then something has to work a lot harder than it needs to because your central body is not working enough.
Right. And so I think to like sum up what because now I know Dara's probably like, I don't even know what they're talking about now. Like to kind of get it back to like digestible information that our clients can take away from listening to this. I would sum it up as the difference that we just kind of looked at there in the pelvic region, the core, and how that relates to especially distal injuries in the knee and the ankle and the foot complex. The wider Q angle and then that anterior tilt. Those are things, the glute median weakness and the anterior tilt. I'm dealing with that all day long. Mm-hmm. It's ubiquitous in what we deal with for anything from low back pain down. I'm dealing with that on a daily basis. So for those of you listening, if you're a female, you're already at a disadvantage of just anatomically having more stress on your knees because of the quad dominance, because of the position of your pelvis, which then also inhibits the glutes and the core in a way. You're not as stable through the low back potentially, or more at risk for low back injury in the future. Then we add the wider Q angle. Knees are more susceptible to caving in. Now we need more glute medius strength, more external rotation strength of the femur to counteract that. We haven't even talked about how that affects the foot and ankle complex if you're a runner. It goes into such a depth that when you guys are on our table, this is what's going through Elza in my head. It's not just let's test your glute med strength with a hip abduction exercise. Mm-hmm. I'm looking and thinking about so much more, and I hope you guys know that, because we are generally trying to make you better. But for those of you listening, if you're a female with knee issues, this is something you get from this podcast. You need more hamstring and more glute and need to be better control of your pelvis. What are your thoughts on that? So
I agree with all of those things, but I also just want to balance it out by saying females are definitely predispositioned to very specific injuries that are different than men. But genetic females have more slow twitch muscle fibers in their body than men do. They tolerate endurance much better than men do.
And pain.
Intolerance.
Way better. My men scream off that table way more than my female clients.
And they actually, I know they need like more recovery in different times of the cycle versus others, but in general, they don't take as long to recover as men after a workout.
Is that science?
You anecdotally speaking?
Research I did. It's just, yeah.
That goes into the man flu. There's studies that show that the flu hits the man harder. I'm just saying, when my wife yells at me to get up off the couch and get to the kids, I am in more pain than she was a couple of days before. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, I won't be following that rule in my house with.
Yeah, I just wanted to say there's so many phenomenally powerful female athletes out there. So if you just can understand your body and learn to listen to your body, you can do great things. And if you learn to work with how your body is unique, you can do all the athletic things that you need your body to be able to do and keep a strong, healthy life for as long as you can.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, I think this was an awesome conversation. I think we really touched on a lot of different issues, different topics, different thought points. And honestly, we could definitely have another episode or a few other episodes just specifically on women's health recovery. And in the future, we definitely will be bringing a pelvic floor therapist to the conversation to specifically talk about that a little bit more in depth. But thank you so much, Dr. Greg and Elza, for joining us today for this podcast. It's a great episode. If you're in the Jacksonville area and you're looking for some amazing PTs that will listen to you get to the root of the issue, no matter what your gender is, Movement Driven is here for you. Just visit us at movementdriven.com. Thank you guys so much. Awesome episode.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the Movement Driven podcast with Dr. Greg Goldberger. Want to see how we're helping people in Jacksonville bridge the gap between pain and performance? Head on over to movementdriven.com. Until next time, keep moving, stay driven.